In some bizarre alternate universe, Duke Nukem Forever would have come out like Rage. Instead of entering a long-term development paralysis, it would have broken ground as a great console title from a formerly PC-exclusive shooter house. Its ultra-polished graphics and varied gameplay would invite gamers to explore its imaginative world. And just for showing up after a long wait, we would have forgiven the simplistic, somewhat old-school gameplay. That's not what happened to Duke, but Rage, from id Software, founders of the genre, embodies all of those things, but most importantly, it's a blast to play. You may even notice various elements seem like a love letter to other games the guys at id must have played while working hard to bring this to the world.
Secrets, secrets. Everyone's got a little secret.
Like any other 90s shooter, you played the identity-free survivor of a devastating world event, complete with slick military haircut. Asteroid Apophis has destroyed the world as we knew it, and you emerge from cryosleep into a sun-baked, arid wasteland to do whatever it takes to get by. Everyone knows you're special, and no one knows quite why.
Those bandits shouldn't be too hard to take down. Not for you. I hear there's something special about you Ark people.
The first thing you'll notice is how thoroughly realized this world is. Everything from the rock formations to the devastated urban skylines feels like an artist has touched it, lending it credibility. The graphics, brought to us by Ubermind John Carmack, allow this place to exist. You are there. Unlike the post-apocalyptic nightmare that label-mate Bethesda brought us in Fallout 3, with miles and miles of grimly brown and green hardscrabble rock gardens, dilapidated settlements, and tent cities, Rage presents this world after the end of the world as a thing of beauty. Civilization is rebuilding, technology is resurfacing, and it feels like everything's going to be alright. You know, eventually. The game's gorgeous visuals are powered by a process pioneered by id called megatexture, in which a massive amount of visual information can be presented on screen at any time. Id says that an uncompressed build of the game is 1 terabyte in size, roughly 50 times the amount of data that resides in each retail case. One huge advantage this brings, aside from being downright gob-stopping to look at, is that it has empowered the level designers at id to not recycle any assets, leaving various portions of the overworld and every breakaway mission area unique. In retrospect, I never felt like I was covering the same ground, even when I was literally covering the same ground. And in pondering a second run-through, no levels popped to mind as dreadfully grind-worthy. The world is gritty in a way that only the game developers situated beyond the Iron Curtain seem to have nailed, with games like Painkiller and Stalker. The price for all this comes partially in the form of the game's footprint. Xbox 360 owners are required to switch between 3 discs over the course of the game's different single and multiplayer modes, while an optional install helps load times. PS3 owners only need 1 disc, but their install is mandatory. The other catch is texture popping. While not quite as noticeable on consoles because analog sticks prevent you from whipping your head around quickly, world details sometimes pop, load in slowly, or simply don't look all that great on closer examination. When you realize that the game is running at a never-ceasing, silky smooth 60 frames per second, these nitpicks become a small price to pay for what is probably the best-looking game ever. A few bugs cropped up from time to time, but hardly enough to cause a scene. The inhabitants of Rage's world are also a special touch. While you don't form any long-term relationships with any of them, many are memorable. The secret is in the animation. While not as detailed as thoroughly motion-captured characters in other modern titles, their slightly cartoonish hand-animated movements allow for a lot of expression, while most of the voice acting is serviceable.
Well, hello there, cutie. Please tell me what I can do for you.
While enemies leap, shuffle, and scream at you, the real pleasure comes in how you injure them. Building on the area-specific goring system they put in Doom 3, injecting your foes with ammunition allows for great feedback. When you shoot them, you get obvious and dynamic reactions. The golden question in regard to Rage seems to be, is this an open world? With a plurality responding to the negative. But that's not entirely accurate. As id's most ambitious game ever, there's plenty to do here, depending on which phase of the game you're in, of course. There's a discrete primary storyline here, but there are also plenty of side quests and distractions to keep you busy. While there's not much else to do in the tutorial-friendly first settlement, headed up by the John Goodman-blessed Dan Hagar, once you reach the town of Wellspring, you'll have plenty of opportunities to futz around. Unfortunately, all of that evaporates as you enter the final stages of the game, and you're basically back to shooting dudes. Between the game's settlements and mission points is a large overworld that presents a great opportunity to rack up cash, knocking out bandits for local vendors, or other cool distractions like collecting falling meteorites or stunt jumps. There's no real reward for exploring these canyons and degraded interstate junctions, so unless you're super into car combat, a lot of this will come off as window dressing. While the first half of the narrative peddles you around an open wasteland, working for fair citizens against an array of savage bands, the latter half introduces a new conflict between two factions, the obviously Combine-inspired Authority, and the Resistance, because, of course.
Welcome to our little home. It's a bit of a mess, but we like it.
You never really discover why the Authority is so evil, if they are in fact so evil, and even while you're automatically playing for the Resistance, you don't know why their cause is so righteous either. There are plenty of allies, but no real strong villains here. There's also a complete lack of scale. The Resistance is never bigger than the half-dozen people the game introduces you to. And even as the Authority takes over the cities you frequent and can never seem to identify you even after you've mowed down hundreds from their ranks, a sense of dread or dramatic thumbing never arises from the story, even as it winds down to a muted conclusion. It's as if id played Half-Life 2 and then learned nothing about interactive experiences with oppressive technologically enhanced regimes. In short, you are good guy, they are bad guy, shoot, shoot, shoot.
You've heard the expression, out of the frying pan? Well, welcome to the fire.
Rage leaves an odd first impression. When you leave the Ark, which consists of a single room, there is no emotional build-up. There's no shock and awe that comes from stepping out onto an alien world like Bethesda perfected in Oblivion and Fallout 3. Your controls are twitchy. Your first weapon sounds like a loud firecracker. Your first vehicles support extremely loose handling, with twists that feel more like the turning of a cursor rather than the twisting of a weighted object with measurable inertia. Up front, Rage makes no apologies for how fast and loose it plays, and that lends to a lot of the game's charm. id Software knows how to do action, and they nail it here. Make no mistake, this game is a shooter, despite obvious parallels to a game like, say, Borderlands. Your character's progression is dictated by the narrative. There are no skill points or talent trees here, you're here to shoot dudes. Your health regenerates, which is just fine, while bandages allow for easy recoveries, necessary when you're getting dogged on by groups. Should you ever bite the big one, you have a built-in defibrillator minigame to bring you back to life. Your recovered health and proximity shock dictated by how well you perform. Die again before it recharges, and then you're really dead. It's incredibly unwise to run and gun here despite the developer's pedigree, forcing you to take turns from cover whenever possible. In an era of Snap 2 cover systems, Rage takes the props of Gears of War like chest-high walls and sofas, allowing for slower and more methodical firefights unseen in an id game. You get a variety of weapons as you progress through the game, making no penalty in stockpiling a ton of ammo. As a result, despite the interesting tools at your disposal, I found myself loading up on buckshot and using the shotgun in nearly every situation. The game tries to branch out at times with stuff like mind control darts, but they honestly feel like work after a few deployments. In addition to your firearms, you're also able to craft items using an incredibly intuitive interface. Purchase schematics, acquire junk around the world, and you can create everything from intelligently lethal boomerangs to robotic spiders that provide extra firepower or distract foes while you flank them. A standalone inventory screen hints at some deep resource management, but I never spent more than a few minutes looking at it through the entire time that I played. The game never chores you with searching individual lockers for loot, which was quite a relief after spending the past year with Borderlands and Deus Ex Human Revolution. I never lost the addictive momentum of combat to try and find more gears or cloth rags. Despite all this talk about weaponry, your best tool against mutant hordes is actually the save feature. The game makes a sparse effort at best to preserve your progress, and until you learn to save ritually, it's not difficult to lose 20 to 30 minutes of progress at a time. You'll quickly realize that maybe you shouldn't have gambled with that shotgun charge against a nearly dead opponent. A lot of tension is sapped from complex confrontations with the knowledge that you can, and will, save moment to moment rather than at predetermined checkpoints that force you to best groups of opponents. That said, as someone who's merely decent at shooting games, Rage on normal difficulty was a bit too easy. Start on something higher and work from there. The variety of humanoids you upload ammo into run the gamut from mutants to Borkovied super soldiers, each requiring different tactics to stomp out. When fighting feral topless imps, I found myself charging at them or circle strafing away from them as they amassed and deployed from ceilings, shotgun pumping. When combating the Authority, I was almost always crouched behind cover, methodically dismantling their individual defenses. This works even better when the game finds ways to put these various sets of enemies together, forcing you to change your fighting stance on the fly. Missions themselves involve a lot of killing people and blowing stuff up, with strange segues in collecting lonely flowers. While you're thankfully equipped with a super handy map/GPS in the overworld, you're sadly deprived of even an intelligent arrow when you're actually in the mission zones. This hurts in several ways. For one, mission objectives can be vague, which forced me into dizzying loops in more than one instance trying to find what to do next. For another thing, some important quest items are inconspicuous, hidden amongst the vast detail of the world. Worse still is when you're actually attempting to find a quest giver or a specific NPC, especially in a crowded town like Wellspring. The game solution is in fact a map in the instruction manual that I only found by accident. There's plenty of distraction in Rage's world though, something highlighted by the game's achievement, or trophy if you must insist, listing. Virtually all of these can be ignored, although they're often called on by the story just to highlight the fact that they exist, but all provide money or upgrades. Races are fun, whether armed or unarmed, granting you upgrades that'll make your toing and froing across the wasteland easier. I found races with larger, heavier vehicles more fun than skipping around with the buggy because of the previously mentioned twitchy handling. Mutant Bash TV is a series of arena matches for cash and prizes. The bars of the world feature several cute mini-games, including Rage Frenzy, a card game that gets better as you collect your deck while slaughtering across the wasteland. Meet a new NPC? Chances are there's a card nearby that you can add to your deck. In a bizarre twist, the bulk of the game's multiplayer doesn't involve jibby fragging, but rather the wheezing of buggy motors as you blow up other players and steal meteorite fragments. There's even a series of canned cooperative missions, but I honestly didn't get to spend much time with it.
Excellent. Put a good show on and I'll put it in reruns for years.
There's probably enough to nitpick about Rage to sink the entire ship. This is a collective effort of a very talented group of artists and technicians who've slaved away for years under the vanity mark of a legendary developer. At the end of the day, Rage is a breath of fresh air in an industry clogged with weighty military shooters and micromanaged character builds. Its simplicity may well be its downfall, but while the industry has moved during its development time, it's hardly stuck to the era of its conception. More importantly, the game is fun. When I wasn't playing it, I wanted to play it, a trait that so few games have. In the end, that was the only justification I needed to play it. 9 out of 10.